Hello, everybody. This is Debbie Eno from Teacher Success Coach with another episode of Female Educators Roundtable. As you guys know, on this platform, we talk about pre-COVID, during COVID, and post-COVID in relationship to education. What have actually been taking place in the classroom when we were, on lockdown. And now that we've finished with lockdown, what is it like for us going back into the classroom and for the children and possibly the parents? So on this platform, this is what we talk about. And I talk to educators around the world. So not only in the UK, it's really nice when I have another fellow UK colleague, because we share something in common, like the challenges of what's going on, the content in schools, etc. So it's really nice. Thank you very much, Claire, for coming on board. I do appreciate that. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Tell us about yourself. Tell us what country you come from. Tell us the area you teach, and then we just discuss what it's been like.
Hello, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be invited to have a bit of a chat. So I'm in the UK, I'm just south of Manchester. I'm an acting head in a primary school, 2-form entry, but I've just recently taken on that role. So during pre and post pandemic, I was in the classroom teaching year 6.
Right, thank you very much. Okay, so what it was like during the pandemic teaching. The thing about it, I always think it's far more challenging teaching the young children, per se, plus during COVID. I just cannot imagine how really stressful that would have been. And also when you come back and you were not able to touch them, it's like mask and all of that. I really commend you guys, second at primary school teachers. You guys have done a great job, because I would not have been able to do that, because it's stressful by itself, much less having to do that when you're on, when you have a pandemic. What was it like?
Well, I had a slightly different experience to other teachers, I think, because during the first lockdown, I was actually on maternity leave. So that initial feeling of school ending and the expectation to be teaching online and, not knowing what technology to use, not knowing how it works, I missed that step. So I went back to school in the September, and then by the time we went back into lockdown and we did online learning, my school had kind of been through this extremely steep learning curve. They'd done it once. All of my team were very much, right, we know what we're doing now, we've done this before. And then I came into that shock of, oh my goodness, I'm on a camera, parents can hear me teaching. I feel very much quite vulnerable, I think, knowing that there are parents in the background watching, popping their heads on. I think the most frustrating thing was that they're not seeing your best as a teacher. There's no way you can deliver your lessons online as you do in the classroom. You miss that real free flow, the element of practical learning, children getting their hands involved, standing up, doing role play. And I feel like that practical element, that getting involved and stuck in, is where the best learning happens. And you just can't do that in front of a screen. And that is frustrating. I did have a really, really difficult lesson once where a child didn't realise their microphone was on, and they quite openly slagged off the lesson that I was delivering to the rest of the class, at which point there was a very awkward silence. That was very difficult. But of course, I knew, and I hope that they knew, that that wasn't a typical lesson, because you are very limited, I think.
Yeah. Thank you for that. And one of the things I find is we are actually coming into these children homes.
Yeah.
And it was also quite evasive, because so many things happen. Or, there are other teachers from across the world were sharing different things, in terms of, children they might have the camera on and parents don't know, and they're walking in the background, all sorts. So in terms like that, it was a real learning curve for all of us, because the parents didn't know how to navigate the platform, and we didn't know too much how to navigate the platform. So it was all of that taking place.
Yeah, we had a real issue with children wearing their pajamas on camera. We had to keep saying to them, please get dressed. This isn't appropriate. This wouldn't be appropriate in school. It certainly isn't now.
Wow. Okay, so you guys had them put their cameras on. So they had to put the cameras on.
Yeah, we did. For a safeguarding reason, actually, we decided it would be better for the children to have the camera on. Yeah, but then I did teach the older children, so I know that some of the teachers in year 1 and year 2, they'd have the camera on, but they'd have a parent with them at the same time next to them. So it worked slightly differently.
Right. Okay. Okay. It's interesting because being a secondary school teacher, the student had a choice. They had a
Yeah,
choice to put their cameras on, and you know when they're given a choice, they take the choice of no. So it was a no for them. They did not put the cameras on. It was just me putting my camera on. So I know some of my colleagues did not have the cameras on, but I felt it was necessary me putting my camera on because I wanted them to see me, and I felt it would be a little bit more connecting
yeah,
if they saw me. And I
yeah.
encourage. Sorry, Karen.
I completely agree about that connectivity, because I find when I'm delivering teaching, if I get no response, or there's no two-way conversation, that connectivity, I then find that harder to teach, because I
Yes.
need that that kind of response from the children to know, is it making sense? Do you understand? Would you like to contribute? And I'd always encourage, write on the chat box, put your microphone on, but very often you would get that reluctance to do so, and you wouldn't get that back, and that's difficult in itself.
Yeah. Thank you. That's, for me, that was mega because there were, they had the camera on, they have it off. Okay, then speak to me on the mic. And it's like, my mic isn't working. And you're thinking, really? It's like I heard out and I was coming on all excited and said, hi guys, And I said, there's nobody there. And they said, some of them might unmute and say, yes, miss, we're there. They might write in the chat. And I would say to them, out here is so lonely. It's nice to see some faces, And then I might have, because my class, because at the time I was teaching A-level psychology and sociology. So I might have 15 students online. But out of that, just 3 might decide to put their cameras on so I could actually see them. But the rest, I forget that. And I felt like it's like, I want to see a facial expression. I want to know, are you reading me? I want to know what you look like. So for me, when we went back into schools, right, the student was saying, hi, miss. Hi, miss. And I'm looking at them. Oh, hi. So which class are you in for me? And they say, oh, I'm in year 12 or year 13. I said, I haven't got a clue because you guys know me, but I don't know you guys.
Yeah, I suppose you miss on that relationship building as well, don't you, so much? And
Yes.
I suppose when we did get back into the classroom, it just made you that much more grateful for that feedback and that, connectivity with the children. But yeah, it was very much missed.
Thank you. So how was it for you guys when you actually started back into the physical classroom? Was it a phase back, phase return? Was it, because different schools were doing different things, although in the UK, different schools were doing different things. Even during the lockdown, different schools were doing different things. Some of them were, were giving handouts. Some of them were saying, no, we're not giving worksheet. You come on at XYZ time. So we were all doing different things within the same country. So in terms of when we went back to the classroom, how did you guys go back to the classroom?
So in terms of in my classroom, it was very much business as usual, back to usual lessons. But we were kept in a bubble. So me and my children had our break time and our lunch time at different times to the rest of the school. We had our lunch in the classroom. So yes, I had the children back in, but it did feel very lonely because I didn't get those comments in the staff room with other teachers. It was me and the children and no one else. Obviously lots more hygiene, lots more breaks, lots more hand washing, things like that, which was a little bit alien. Yeah, and it felt very isolating, I have to say, and there was just that constant feeling of being on edge, being uneasy, that it could happen again, that yourself or the children could be unwell. So it was difficult. It felt like a different job for a long time.
That's interesting. Thank you for that. It's like I'm trying to visualize what mine was like, because when we went back, one of the things I found very tiring is, the students came to us. So anytime a class, because I was teaching year 10 11, 12, and 13, and I was teaching just psychology for and then I was teaching health and social care. So in most of the classes, the student came to us. And one of the things I found very tiring is wiping down all the tables after every lesson. It's like, and then wiping down the, the computer, but the plus is because I was in that room for a number of lessons, it's like wiping down the table. And when they come in, oh, you guys need to use the hand sanitizer. I found it exhausting.
I'd completely forgotten we had to do that. I must have blanked it out of my memory. But you've just brought back a memory of we had to, if we were doing an IT lesson or if we were using iPads or laptops, we had to wipe them down at the end. And to manage it, we were asking the children to do it, but they were putting so much sanitizer on all the laptops, they all kept breaking. It was a complete disaster.
Exactly. You see, so it's like that. It's interesting because when I had an IT lesson, that was the same thing. But the plus for me is, it was post 16 age. So, so it wasn't too bad post 15 because 10 is 15. So it wasn't too bad. But I tell you, talking about excessive, it's like when I started doing the table, I'm thinking, you know what, this is too tiring, man. So when I come in, I say to them, okay, we had the wipes. And I say, okay, I want everybody to take some and wipe the table down. And it's like, as you say, although they were older, they were using excessive. So you're looking at the hand sanitizer was, for the table was you finishing so quickly. And I said, well, hold on, what's going on? And when they're using the paper towel to wipe the table, you're thinking, this doesn't make no sense. And then the clean, and then they would leave it on the floor. After a while, I'm thinking, this is giving me more work. I'm talking too much. Probably it's better if I just identify one student to do it. So started doing that. And for us, the other thing is having the windows open. Miss, I'm cold. Miss, I'm cold. Can I have my coat on? And I found that was a nightmare. That was a nightmare. So in terms of, although we were in the physical classroom, in terms of, did you guys, when you went back, did you use the computers?
Yeah, we did. Yeah, as I said, everything in the classroom went back to normal, more or less. It's just that we weren't integrating with other children in other classes.
Oh my goodness. I just trying to visualize, right? When you were saying that you did it in bubble, we actually do year bubble. So It's like all year 10s together, but we didn't eat with them. They had lunch together, so all year 10s went and have lunch together, because we did them in year group. But the good thing about it is, we as teachers, we still, maintain our peer group in terms of teachers, our colleagues. But I cannot imagine which means you were with these children every minute of that day.
Yeah, it was exhausting because, as much as you love them and you love their company and teaching them, you need those breaks throughout the day. So it did feel relentless, the days. And, as I said, lonely, if you have a child maybe that's misbehaved in a lesson, you just want to go to the staff room and have a vent or ask for advice. And there was none of that. It did feel very strange.
It must feel really tiring. I just, I did that when I was working in nursery, when we actually had the children, at nursery lunchtime, we had lunch with the children because trying to get them to, see like a group, etc. I used to hate it because it's like, there's no break. It's like constant with them. So I could imagine you are doing that every day. So what did you do in terms of, when you actually want to come up and have air? How did you manage? What did you do?
Do you know what? I really can't remember. I think it was just a very long, relentless period of time. I know that as the weather got better, you could kind of from a distance have a conversation with a member of staff on the playground, socially distanced. So we got into the habit of finding a way to catch each other's eye across the playground and have a little bit of a 30-second chat before we got back into the classroom. And I know something that I did with my team at the time was on a Monday after school I'd arrange a Zoom chat, and there was no agenda, there was no SLT, let's talk about this in school, let's talk about this. It was just, how is everybody? Are you okay? let's just have that conversation. Nothing's off limits, just vent or be there for each other. And I think people really appreciated that.
Yeah. Thank you. That must have been really, people looking forward to that, because could you imagine being with the children 24/7? They come in, that you greet them, now you have them all day. Break time, we were so eager when it's break time, you're running out of your classroom, or you saying to the child, come on, time to go for break, come on, you guys need a break. You couldn't even say that.
No. But the children need a break from you as much as you need a break from them as well, so they must have found it difficult.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you. So what happened when, so what was some of the challenges there? What was some of the try? What was the exciting bits?
Some of the challenges back in the classroom.
Yes.
I think the children, one thing that I noticed, and maybe it was just my class or maybe it was more of a nationwide thing, was that the children's ability to work together as a team and to socialise was limited. It was almost as if they'd spent so much time on screen, so much time in front of the telly. A lot of the children had working parents, so during the pandemic the parents were on the laptop and they had to be quiet or go away and do something themselves. They had lost a lot of those communication skills. So and they're so important in learning. So if you're delivering a lesson, you say, talk to your partner, what do you think, or can you contribute, or how would you answer this? They just found that much more difficult. So I spent a lot of my time was teaching them those social skills, teaching them that teamwork, that collaborative learning, which felt at the time more important than a lot of the curriculum itself. So that was a huge challenge for me. As well, I felt I became a little bit de-skilled as a teacher. So I'd had 9 months out of school on maternity leave, at which point you're desperate to get stuck back in, you're desperate to come back and continue with your career. But then we went into lockdown. I spent so much time doing the online learning, the worksheets, the online practical games like that, that actually being back in the classroom and having your practical things so much harder. I almost felt like I had to go back to my teacher training and think, oh right, so this is what a good lesson looks like, and or reflect on a lesson that I'd done and say, well, hang on, why weren't we up out of our chairs? Why weren't we moving things and talking about things more? Because it had been such a long time since we'd done that. So again, I was a bit slower on the mark with that, as were the children.
Wow, that is so interesting. So thank you for that. So what's happening in terms of, yes, that was one aspect, but you're back in the classroom now, because right now you're back, life is normal, business is normal. Well, I feel that now that we're back in, right, on a full-time permanent basis, it feels like business as normal. Nobody had taken in consideration these children mental health issues, because they've actually not had the opportunity to fully express themselves and express their emotions. What have you seen in terms of that?
Do you know what? It's heartbreaking, because it was stark, the mental health impact it had on so many children, and that was on lots of different levels as well. And one thing that I do find very upsetting now is I think that that's long standing. I think that we're still seeing that impact now in the classroom, and I think it's stuck with those children. And there are so many initiatives in schools at the moment to support well-being, to make children aware of mental health, to teach them how to deal with their mental health, which is great. That's been a huge positive that's come out of the pandemic, that we're all now so much more aware, we're all more savvy, we're all skilled, because the amount of staff training that we have had on it as well has been great. But I think it's something that unfortunately is long standing, and it is staying with those children and those members of staff. They're dealing with it as well, and they're having to look after those children who have experienced similar issues.
Thank you. Issues like what you've noticed, and what type of indicators that tells you that, okay, this is a big mental health issue.
Anxiety. So we find at my school that I think one of the biggest issues is anxiety. So whether it's about coming to school, we have an entire wellbeing team. Actually, we've got 2 members of staff that don't work in the classroom. Their job is entirely to support the wellbeing of the children. Some days that looks like going to the children's houses and encouraging them to come into school and listening to them. Sometimes that's taking children out of classes because they're not coping with the pressures of the classroom. And at that point, you know, as and when it's needed, speaking to them, listening to them, giving them support in that respect. Yeah, I think that's been the biggest one that I've seen.
Yeah, thank you. It is for me as a secondary school teacher. Those are some of the things I observe as well. And now that I'm in a different school, this is something seems to be on the increase in terms of the high anxiety and the coming back into the classroom. Some of them don't want to come into school. In one of the schools I've been in, there have been 2 students, year 13, that cannot cope with coming back into school. And the attendance and the timekeeping is all over the place. That's what I find with the students now. Timekeeping is a real issue. They're coming in all different time of the day.
Yeah.
And there is nothing, because even though you put them on reports, I don't feel it makes a difference, because the problem is much more rooted and greater than we could ever imagine. And that's a big thing, because before the pandemic, I never really noticed that the not coming to school was such an issue. After the pandemic, I have noticed the anxiety for coming back into schools is quite high among secondary school children. So I could imagine what primary is like. You know, whereby there is a pile of excuses for not coming into the classroom. Well, you would say excuses, but that's their fear and their anxiety, their inability to cope.
And
And
I think
another,
a lot of the parents don't know how to help and support those children. You know, we have parents crying out for help. They're emailing and saying, I can't get my child to come in, or, you know, I'm ringing and asking for help and it's not working. And it's new to them. They don't know what to do. They're crying out.
yeah. So what you guys do in situation like this, when parents are phoning and saying, my child isn't coming in, I don't know what to do? Because realistically, right? As parents, and as you know, as apprentices, how you don't know how to get them to come in. If they say they're not coming in, right? If a child say, it doesn't matter what age, if that child said that they're not coming in, I don't think as a parent, there is much we could do than coax them to go in.
We, as I said before, we do home visits. We will drive to a child's house as a team of with the wellbeing team and encourage them to come into school, because I think our priority is, you know, acknowledging that they're feeling anxious or worried, and then actually physically guest them in the building. They don't need to go into lessons. They don't need to do anything that they're finding difficult, but we need to get them in because they have to come in. We offer a lot of things like we've got some really good charities locally who offer counselling, things like that. But the waiting list, again, is enormous. So that these parents that are crying out for help and these children, we've got help for them, but they have to wait for it. And at which point are they going to be in crisis?
Yes. That is so very true, because the mental health team are stretched. They are
Massively.
really stretched, exactly. And it is so very true, because I think the start is getting them to come in. It doesn't, you don't have to come to lesson if you find it hard, but coming into the building, that's one step in trying to get them to get over or walk with the problem or the challenge. And that is, I tell you, it is hard, because like you, I do have parents saying, I don't know what to do. And okay, is there any way they could actually, come in? And it's like talking to these young people as to, yes, I understand some of the challenges, but you have to try to come in at some point. It's challenging. It's challenging because that's the biggest thing I see coming back into the classroom: mental health issue and behavior issue. I don't know if you're finding. For me, finding that I find the behavior is a big, big, big thing. Sometimes I do not know what to do to navigate the disruptive behavior in the lesson.
Mm. We're finding as well, I've found in my experience, a lot of friendship issues have seemed to be more frequent. And I don't think that's helped by the amount of time that children are spending on social media. I think that is a huge, huge issue that, again, a lot of parents don't know how to deal with, because we've spent so much time educating the children on how to behave, how to be respectful, how to look after people online. The children all know the right answers. They say, oh, we mustn't do this, and I mustn't say something I wouldn't say to their face, and but then it doesn't translate to real life. They still carry on doing it, and it ends up building and building, and that can affect children's mental health as well, because they just don't know how to deal with the enormity of these issues that are happening with social media.
Yeah, that is so true in terms of regulating their emotion as well. They don't know how to regulate their emotions.
No.
You see, I find that's a big thing. The two biggest thing I'm finding right now is the behavior in the classroom. And sometimes you're thinking, okay, how can I deal with that? It's like you pull all the tools out you've got because you realize, okay, this is a different kind of behavior. Because it's like as you say, there's a friendship group, and the behavior is the constant giggling, and for no reason. They would just, one child would say something or call a child name incorrectly, and it end up in a whole thing of laughing, and you're thinking, oh my goodness, okay, yes, come on, get it together, guys, get it sorted. That's one of the things that teachers are now finding is so difficult, because the tools you used to use before to deal with the discipline in the classroom, you cannot use the same thing right now.
Why do you think that is? Do you think it's because they've lost that consistency in a behaviour system for being at home and back in, and at home back in, or do you think it's something else?
Well, I think it's a combination of that. I think the fact is, at home, they didn't have much of a structure. And in terms of form discipline, they did not have that either. And there was no consistency, right? So now they're coming back into the classroom, and we have expectation that we had before pandemic. And we now transferring those expectations to this new situation, and it's not working because they have been out for so long, right? And they had no structure, they had no form discipline, so therefore they don't know what to do. They don't know how to do it. And we are having some expectation which before was working, because they know this is the time you come to school and this is what you do in school, etc., etc. But I had that, and they've gone back out, and it's all over the place. And now they come back in, and it's like we expect them to sit quietly, to face the front, stop constantly chatting. You've got work to do. Exam is coming up. Focus. These are foreign language to the student now. Because they had it before, and they went back in and they've been on for so long that when they come back in, we're expecting to pick up from where we left off. It's not working. And it's to identify that this is not working. So therefore, we cannot expect to use the same tools for the job we had before, because although the job in name sound the same, but the job is very different. And the quicker we realize that, the less stressed we are going to be as teachers.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I completely agree.
Because one of the things is like, last week, this, because I was teaching year 10, I teach year 10, 12, and 13. And there was the year 12, the year 10, the disruptive behavior was so great. And I'm thinking, I cannot keep these students all in the classroom because the three of them that were just constantly disrupting and trying to coax them, have conversation, change them around, go have some air, come back. And I was still having that thought, you know what? I have to let you exit my classroom because for this lesson, because there is no point. Because no, this behavior is affecting the mass of my students. So I cannot accept that because it means that the majority of the students are not being taught, because I spend this time trying to discipline and negotiate with the students. So those are some of the things I'm finding, because I think before we went out, we had these tools and we were well equipped for dealing with classroom management because we were well equipped. No problem. We were good at it. They've been out for a while, they came back, they've gone out, and they come back now permanently, and we're trying to use the same tools, which isn't working. And some of the new tools we're trying to use, like putting them on report. I'm laughing because the reason why I'm laughing in terms of putting them on report, it just go right over the student's head. That, they come and say, Miss, I've got to report. You need to sign. I'm looking at them and I'm thinking, why do I need to sign this report? But Miss, because I'm on reports. I say, so, okay, what was your behavior like? But Miss, I did a lot of work. So it's like for them is, forget about the discipline and consistency. I've done a lot of work. But did you understand the work you've done? So it's really challenging trying to navigate this behavior we've got and trying to use the same old techniques to deal with this behavior, which looks like the one that we had before, but in practice, it's not the same. Because now it is coupled with mental health issue.
It's a much bigger issue, isn't it, than it used to be? So
yes,
the original strategies definitely need adapting, and I think there's a more ingrained issue that you're talking about there that needs addressing. I completely agree.
And when you look at it, whether or not in primary school or secondary school, it's there, because something you said which was interesting was the anxiety and the mental health is now something we're dealing with, which is before we were looking at it, okay, this behavior was XYZ. We can no longer name the behavior because this behavior is disguised into so many wrapping.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it links to what you were saying before about children coming into school. They need to be ready to learn, to be able to learn. But if they've got all this other things going on, mental health, anxiety, they're not in a position to be able to learn, which might be why the behaviour is an issue.
Exactly.
Because that needs addressing first.
Exactly. So in terms of addressing this behavior, which appear to be, disruption, etc., it's not that. The plus for me is my background is psychology. So when they come to me, I'm not concerned about the contents. I'm concerned is the mental health happening here in terms of your behavior. I need to try to unpack that before I'm able to do content, because content is way down my list.
Yeah.
So in terms of dealing with those behavior, the techniques we had isn't working. I could tell anybody that, because for me, the technique which I used to use to deal with a disruptive child, I realized this technique just go right over the head. The disruptive child is still continuing, and and it's there. So in terms of, one of the things is for me is the big behavior issue. What other challenges have you seen as you come back?
Oh, good one. I'm trying to think of something I've not said yet. I think when people initially came back, they were very grateful, because being at home and home learning was so difficult that they were grateful. And I feel like we've very much lost a lot of that gratitude now. We're back to normal. But I think that is justified, you know, because we're spending so much time and money and resources on dealing with the mental health side and getting children to school, that schools are just getting more and more stretched in terms of resources, and actually doing the job, doing the teaching and the learning has so many more barriers before you can actually get to that.
That is so true. That is something I didn't even think about in great detail. That's very, very true. Because it's a different, you know, a whole different mindset, a whole different everything with the students coming back. And in terms of, you know, what you had in the online classroom, have you taken anything back into the physical classroom now from your online classroom?
I mean, we're all a lot more tech savvy than we used to be. So the school that I used to work in, we were living in the dinosaur ages. We didn't have tutoring. Nothing was on a calendar. We all had paper, you know, diaries and things that we'd write in. So in terms of that, I've been massively upskilled with my technology use, and the school has as well. So that's been, I suppose, a positive to come out of it. And I think something for me personally, I always appreciated my team and I always knew how great they are, but that real sense of value of how much we really, really need each other in case something awful happens again, or in case we're really thrown into this complete new world like we were, that is just so important and it needs to be noted.
That's interesting. Thanks for that. It's interesting. Another thing is, did you feel that when you came back into the classroom, was business as usual? Or is it I'm the only one feeling that? I felt it was business as usual, as if people forgot there was a pandemic.
Yeah, I mean, this whole push about, what's the phrase they use, catching up on lost learning, I just feel like it's not thought about. I can't see how you can accelerate their learning to make up for this whole year that they have lost. You know, it's going to take time. It can't be rushed. It can't be crammed. We need to be a bit more realistic there, I think.
Yeah, that's very true. Because for me, when we went back, I was kind of standing there saying, really? As if business as usual, as if there was no pandemic, and as if, you know, people seem to forget that the students have lost, you know, a lot of communication skills and academic skills, and they just went back and here you are, you know, back to normal. And I must say, I found that very challenging because background in psychology, I noticed that for some of my students, it cannot be business as usual because they're not there yet.
The carpet and as if it never happened. No, it has to be acknowledged, doesn't it?
Yeah. And I felt that needed to be noted. And I'm getting you now to put your managerial cap on. How do you, I know that's unfair. How do you think that management could actually deal with that instead of their thinking that it's business as usual?
Well, it's very difficult because the expectations, you know, in terms of data, in terms of Ofsted, I mean, Ofsted won't even acknowledge the fact, you know, if you say, oh, well, that year was a COVID year and they're not interested, you know, they are expecting you to be back business as usual. So those pressures, I feel, are heightened for leaders because they're expected from the powers that be above them to get their results back to where they were, to get the data as good as it used to be, when actually there are barriers that they are expected not to acknowledge, but that have to be acknowledged. You know, I think a good leader has to have awareness that staff have had a difficult time, that staff may have been de-skilled, and also acknowledge that staff need more support with behaviour and looking after these children that are in crisis. And that costs money and that takes time, and that takes away some of the content of learning that has to be delivered in the classroom, because as I said before, if those children aren't ready to learn, they can't learn, and you can't just expect your staff to ignore that.
Thank you. That is really, really good. You know, in terms of the way you actually see that, that's really is good, because that is so true. That is so true, because as you say, business as usual, we expect the student to be here, but how are we going to make this student be here when they're here? And,
Mm.
the anxiety is still there. Even the students who are super bright, the anxiety is so great that their academic ability is suffering because they cannot navigate using both of them.
Mm. I remember as well, though, we had, I can't remember how regularly it was, but we tried to put into our timetable some well-being sessions for the children where, let's talk about what's happened, let's voice our feelings in a safe space. And one of my year 6 children said to me, do you know what, miss? I actually don't want to talk about the pandemic anymore. We don't want to sit here and talk about it. We went through it. We want to move on. So they very much felt like it had been talked about. They were ready to kind of
Yes.
look forward and to get on with being back in school.
Yeah.
But I don't know how much of their emotional maturity, how much their maturity was there, because I still feel like that conversation needed to be had at some point. It might have been that day at that time it wasn't right. But that was that particular child's attitude, which I thought was quite eye-opening.
Thank you. That's interesting, because right now I do feel that the students we need to tap into them to see, okay, how are you feeling? Because we know that they may not necessarily want to talk about the pandemic. I understand that, but they want to talk about the feelings, because it must be some issue with your feelings that why you are behaving in this very unusual way.
I
Because
think as well that some children, and this goes from primary all the way up to the top end of secondary, and actually to some extent with adults, is that maybe they can't verbalize how they are feeling, or maybe they actually do not understand what it is that is making them behave like that. And that's where that open forum and that teaching is really important.
Yes. So in terms of that, to deal with this behavior we're experiencing, I do feel that we need to have this open discussion whereby, we allow the student, okay, how are you today? Tell me one thing that is bothering you. Or, tell me, it could be anything. Because I do feel that because this behavior don't stem from thin air. It does stem from something. Everything have a cause and effect. So this behavior whereby, especially I find year 13, year 12 and 13, it's like bust out laughing, just constantly giggling for no reason. Or the reason could be so petty. Asking them to read halfway through reading, students they're just bust out laughing. And I find that in so many schools I've been in. Why are you laughing? They can't even tell you what they're laughing.
So do you find giving them that safe space and asking them how they're feeling, do they open up straight away, or do you feel like you need to have kind of earned that then for them to open up, or you've needed to build that relationship before they will open up?
Yes, it's, in the first session, they're not going to be opening up there because they would have the giggle, etc. But it's like, just continue to hold space for them.
Yeah.
Because I think,
yeah,
exactly, when we hold space for them, the first lesson or whatever time we have it, whether or not we schedule it, every day, whatever, it doesn't matter. They may not want to speak in maybe the first 3 sessions, they may not want to speak. But when they know that there is this safe space, eventually I find students start talking. Because another thing, they start saying to each other, shut up. And I said to them, in my lesson, no shut up. There is no shutting up in my lesson. I said, that's negative energy. I don't want you guys to say that. Think of something else. And it could be something one child said that the other one doesn't like. So therefore you end up hearing a shut up, demeaning the other one, and all the negative, because they don't know how to express it and they don't have a space to do that. So I do feel that in schools, we need to start holding a safe space for our students, whether or not we are from tutor to whatever year group, and they know this is a safe space that every morning we have this, PD session or whatever that student could talk about in the session, and it's confidentiality. If a child wants to speak to you extra, then give them that extra, because I just find that the behavior in the classroom for lesson is escalating. And because they don't have any way to voice it. So that's the reason why it's escalating, because where would they put it? They don't know. We haven't given them any place to put it.
Yeah, I completely agree.
So therefore it's going to be put in Miss lesson, Saw lesson, or whoever's lesson. It's going to be put there because we haven't given them a container to put it in. So that's some of the things I have been, finding and identifying in my session, that I know in order to have a different behavior in the classroom, I need to build something different. Because using those tools that they say, oh, well, you could do this, do this, put them on report, or send them outside, or, all the things they're saying to us. It's not only in my lesson. In another lesson, it's the same thing happening.
Yeah, it's not solving the problem, is it?
No, it's not. It's like putting a plaster on it.
Yeah.
So it's bigger than that. Anyway, 3 tips. Thank you very much for that. 3 tips you would give to a new teacher who have started before the pandemic, but during the pandemic, they were online. After the pandemic, they come back into the classroom. What 3 tips can you give them? And another question, before you answer that, I've got something actually came in. What frustrates you as a teacher?
What frustrates me as a teacher? And we could have a whole hour on that, I think. Let me pick one thing. What frustrates me as a teacher?
You could pick 2 or 3, right? We don't have to go into detail, but we could just, you could just say what they are.
I think it's when decisions are made within the school or within education where the children's best interests are not at the heart of that decision. So a decision is made, and when you're expected to change your practice for that decision, and you start to question it and think, why has this decision been made? Why do I have to do this? Because this is not going to help the children. This is not going to benefit them. And is that not why we are all in education? I think I find that frustrating. I can't give a specific example, but.
Yeah, I see that. For me, one other thing is when they keep on changing recap to do now, or when they change something like in terms of, cold calling, and you think, but hold on, this is thing you do all the time, but they just give it a new name that, you target children, and you're thinking, but that's what we've been doing all the time. So why are you guys following the American model, where this is the model we have, and we use this model? We know we need to identify the students who are not talking, so that they could actually talk to it. We empower them, etc. That's I find frustrating. I share that. I find it real frustrating, real frustrating. And another of my frustration is when we do not have enough time to teach the curriculum, to teach the content, because we are skirting over it. Right. The other thing is, I was saying regarding thank you for that, regarding the new teacher. What 3 tips would you give them in terms of to stay in teaching? Because we know a lot of them are ready to run out of teaching.
Ready to run.
Exactly.
So my first tip would be find time or make time to observe your colleagues, because I think I've been teaching for 11 years and I still learn every time I watch a colleague. Even if it's just one small little thing that they do that I think, oh, that's brilliant, or they'll do something in a complete different way that's been really successful, or you just feel that positivity from a teacher delivering a lesson who loves those children, has that connection with the children. I just think every single time you do it, you get some positivity or some learning that comes out of it. So I just think that's really, really important. And if you don't have that time, ask your line manager for some time to do that. So that would be one bit of advice. My second bit of advice would be relationships. If you have a strong relationship with a child, if you genuinely care about them and you genuinely learn about them and, you know, open up a little bit of you as well, and not only will it help their learning, but it will help their behaviour. It will open up many doors of conversation. So always have that time to get to know those children and build a relationship. And my third bit of advice would be to listen to those little gems of, I don't know, jokes or turns of phrase or ideas that come from the children and write them down. Because sometimes one of the things I love about teaching is you never know what kind of day you're going to have, and you can plan a lesson to the latter and it will end up being something completely different. And sometimes that's steered by the children, and sometimes it can be a really serious lesson and they can end up making you laugh, or they can spell something wrong in the book that can, you know, mean something completely different that can make you laugh or make you smile. And sometimes I think when you're really worn down and stressed and overworked, you forget those little diamonds that come from the children and those really special moments. So I'd say write them down, and when you're having a tough day, go back and read over them and just remember why you're in the job and why you love those children.
Thank you. That's brilliant. I love the first one. Was really good because I actually went and observed my colleague, because for two reasons. I have some of the children in the young people in my class. I need to see how they're operating on the lessons. For me, I think that's very, very important. You know, to see how children, you know, operate in your lesson comparing with another teacher's lesson. And also what you say in terms of observing, you know, to see what they're doing that you could take away into your lesson. I think that is such a good thing to do. It is such a powerful thing, because it's like I say, I don't mind anybody coming to my lesson. You don't have to tell me, you could just drop in, because, you know, there's always something that you're teaching that is different, that someone can actually take, you know, from the lesson. And I think that is such a big thing. That is, and this is something teachers tend to forget. That let's see what my colleague is doing. I'm sure I could gain something from that.
Yeah, and I think you get stuck in your ways, don't you? When you do it day after day, you end up sticking to the same routines, and you need that refreshment sometimes that comes from somebody else.
Yeah. And it could, you know, it is a powerful thing, because that's something I tend to, you know, to pop into some people's lesson just to see what it's like, because there's always something new. Or as you say, they do the same thing you do, but they do it differently. I think, that's nice. Because when I went to my colleague lesson on Wednesday, I said to him, I said, there's something you're doing. I said, I do that in my lesson, but slightly different. I like the way you do it. I'm coining that. I take that, you know. So yes, thank you very, very much, Claire. That was a fantastic session. I do appreciate you taking time and come on to share some of your challenges, your triumph, and some of the things that you do, so that other educators would see that and see that, okay, they're not alone. And some of the things that you've identified, yes, let me try that as well. You know, because that's the reason for this platform sharing, because some things we take, you know, and we identify and say, yeah, this is nice. Oh, I didn't realize this could be one of the reasons why this child might be behaving like that. You know, so these platforms are fantastic. And I do feel that we need to have more of this platform, because educators, we need the space. We need to talk.
We do.
I am so grateful for you sharing your experiences, both as a classroom teacher and when you put on your managerial hat. Thank you very much for that. Thank you, Facebook audience. Thank you. Thank you. It was really fantastic. Thank you, Facebook audience. You guys know that on Wednesday, I have another platform looking at, what is it called? Oh my goodness. Oh yes. because we had International Women's Week. I've actually extended that to International Women's Month. So we're going to be sharing other women's experiences of being a woman and having the triple shift, which Claire just had because she's a mother. She's in the classroom and providing emotional support. So we're going to look at that in terms of how we navigate that and how some of the challenges we now have as women being in professional or managerial position, how does that pan out? So that's what we're looking at on Wednesday. Some of the challenges we have as women working in roles that are male dominated or male orientated, and how we look at that and how we need to support each other. So on Wednesday, guys, join me where we will actually be discussing things like that. And all right, and another thing is next Friday, home education, and next Saturday, female educator roundtable. Thank you.